We acknowledge the Ancient Ones, the Greater Shamanic Council of Light, Hermes, both Trismegistus and Seshet, Lady of the Measuring Cord, as above, so below, as within, so without. We acknowledge Imhotep, architect of the cosmos. May the earth be the mirror of heaven. We acknowledge the sacred order of the Magi, and all throughout history who knew, like now, a turning of the ages. We acknowledge the master builders of Göbekli Tepe and the great shining ones at Kalash. The courage and knowledge of the Polynesian wayfinders traversing the great oceans. We acknowledge the prophetic traditions of Ezekiel and Daniel, the traditions of Avalon, the Merlin, and the Round Table, the calendric wizardry of the Maya, and the Venus teachings from Mesoamerica, the Jupiter teachings originating in China, and the Vedic lunar mansion traditions, the Babylonian and Sumerian sidereal zodiacs, the brilliant Hellenistic invention of the seasonal zodiac. The Neolithic peoples around the planet, some still today, honoring the sacred connection between the land and the sky. The Tuatha De Danann in Ireland, who created a time of 2,000 years of peace, the builders of Newgrange. My teachers that are not in human form, Mount Shasta, the Grandfather Rock at the Wonderland of Rocks in Joshua Tree, Mount Haleakala on Maui, the Fish Lake Valley, Hierophany, and the sacred landscapes around the planet, the astrosophy of Rudolf Steiner, and the esoteric astrology of DK in Tibetan, both presaging the shamanic astrology paradigm, and particularly the archetypal visions of C.G. Jung and the cosmology of my mentor, Dane Rijar. For these and more, we give thanks.
Hello, my name is Mary Kern, and I'm the current president of the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School. I'm here with you today to begin our very first vlog with Daniel Giamario, the founder of our school. And I'm just going to go ahead and jump in and introduce Daniel. Go ahead and take it over, Daniel.
Oh, well, thank you, Mary. It'll be great to be able to dialogue with you about this one. Well, I'm going to be hoping to do this once a month, often with you. So this is a new feature. By the way, those of you that have just seen the invocation of the acknowledgement of the lineage that went into our school and our paradigm, this particular show is going to focus on one part of it, which is the part having to do with the Round Table, having to do with Avalon, and having to do with the Merlin. So that'll be like a good kind of overarching context for our discussion today. And I also want to say that since this is the very first show of this kind, which we're going to do around the new moon every month, along with these vlogs will be an article. And so there's an article that goes along with today's conversation, and it's called The Past, Present, and Future Mystery Schools, Essence versus Content. And we're going to discuss that here today, particularly with the reference to at least 4 of the mystery schools as we go through this. But this larger context needs to be explored because it has to do a great deal with one of the main purposes of our school. For myself personally, even as far back as age 8, I had a strong connection, felt a strong connection, not only to Arthur and the Round Table, but also to Merlin. And I would say basically that throughout most of my life, even way before our school started, Merlin, if I had to say who is the one person I would consider to be my inspiration and guide, it's Merlin. And in other contexts, I have written about the predicament of Merlin. And this larger context, I think, is very important to understand for our subject today. which past, present, and future mystery schools. The subtitle of the article, Emulating the Merlin at the Turning of the Ages. So, I mean, let's be honest about this. And actually, the school has been into this since 2017 when we had a whole summit called Preparing for 2020. I think it's pretty easy to see that where we are in the world, the global configuration is probably the most important global configuration in 12,800 years. I mean, this is a big deal, what's taking place on the planet. So it is a turning of the ages, whether you want to say it's every 2,000 year turning of the age, or whether you want to say it's a 12,800 or 26,000 or 320,000, 12 times 26,000 years, whichever one you want to use, we're definitely in a turning of the ages, and I think it's a big one. So we do need the contribution of the Merlin, and I would like to say that I'm hopeful that all people who are working in this paradigm, whether it's our new certified shamanic astrologers or people who have been in the school for a long time, people interested in this, can see that Merlin has a great deal to do with what's going on now. And that is partly because it was the Merlin who had the job of connecting the best of the masculine and the feminine. Now, he existed at a time period where he was like a liaison, a connector point between Arthur and the vision of the Round Table and of the priestesses of Babylon. And in my own research on this whole thing, the story goes way further back than 5th or 6th century Scotland, which seems to be the most realistic site of that drama on more recent times. But it's a motif that goes back thousands of years before that, and it seems to reappear whenever it's necessary at the time of a great, turning point in history, at a time period where we have to think of new ways. So we're going to, be diving into this whole thing of past, present, and future mystery schools. But I want you all to have a really good sense here of what the predicament is of the Merlin or individuals who are working the way I'm describing at a turning of the ages. Because whether it's a male or female version of Merlin, because this is not, about sex here, although usually we would see Merlin being a masculine figure, but he's, as I said, he's the connecting point between the heart, the soul, the intelligence, the heart of men and women working together in collaboration. So basically his predicament was he did honor a lot of the old ways. And if we're going back 2,000 years, he honored the ways, the druidical ways, the pagan ways, the animist ways, the ways of the land and the sky, pre-Christian ways. He did honor those. We could say he was, in fact, a druid, I mean, that was one of the things he was at that time. But he also was very open to the new incoming insights, heartful openings, transmissions that were coming from the new traditions coming in, particularly early Celtic Christianity and the Coptic transmission that was coming in at that particular time. He was open to that. And he also was aware of the chaos of the time period he was in, like all turning of the ages. It's chaos time, like you recognize, like now. Okay, so so his job was he honored all these different sides, the best of the past, the best of what's coming in, and the result of that was that the traditionalists and the conservatives that only honored the stuff from the past hated him because he embraced the new. And then meanwhile, the zealots of the new coming in, of course, hated him because he was he valued what was great about the earlier traditions, and so that put him in he was in the crosswires. But that would be true for anyone who happens to be trying to be a seed person And that's also part of the function of our school, to be a seed person for whatever it is that happens. Whether it is a six mass extinction, whether it's a mass composting that's happening, or whether it's a very seamless movement into a new earth, we don't know. But certainly it's important that we recognize the best of the past and the ability to move forward into the new, not to be attached, and to recognize that we are at a time of chaos, and out of chaos comes the world, as the ancient traditions would say. Mary, that forms kind of like the larger, context for our investigation of past, present, and future mystery schools.
And I thank you. It gives greater meaning to what you're going to be telling us, and gives us a sense of a much bigger perspective. So I really thank you for that beginning introduction. And then you'd mentioned that you're probably going to talk about 4 of these mystery schools and their past, present, and future content versus their essence. And would you like to begin there?
Well, one thing I want to mention first, Mary, is that in our use in the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School of the expression mystery school. So, for example, when we say past, present, and future mystery schools, we're talking about what are otherwise known as the 12 signs. We just call the 12 signs mystery schools of life. All are valid. But this is really important, particularly for those that may be new to this approach. This is not to be confused with sun signs. So we're actually looking at the signs, the 12 signs, as 12 very fundamental, valid, important, and authentic schools of life. And they can show up anywhere in the chart. They can show up through the sun or the ascendant or Venus or Mars. And those who know this particular paradigm know we put actually more attention on the moon and the ascendant and Venus and Mars than placing everybody in the sun sign boxes. The other factor, when we consider the signs as mystery schools, we have to recognize that what is normally thought of as the attributes of the sun signs, and I'm speaking now what happens at the turning of the ages, these attributes are almost always the remnants of the shadow of that mystery school. So it's basically not paying attention to why some of those characteristics became addictions or over-identifications or misunderstandings or shadow expressions, which is why we try to move people past the whole sun sign kind of thing. But here in our conversation now, we're not specifically focusing on any part of the chart per se. Those who are listening to this, if you have a rising sign that happens to be one of the ones we're going to talk about, you can relate to it there. But if your moon is there, it would be like a different way of relating to it, and much more likely the shadow aspect of it. Now, we are doing this presentation. In fact, most of you will be hearing this somewhere around the time of the Libra new moon. And we're doing these vlogs now to be in harmony with new moon times. I'll also mention that the content of these vlogs will not always be the same kind of thing. Sometimes it will be more topical. We may have a vlog about Jupiter and Saturn moving into Aquarius or something like that. But today it's more, some of the core material of understanding this paradigm, how this paradigm operates. And that's looking at this really deep and important subject of what happens to the mystery schools over time. Well, what I noticed, and Mary and I were talking about this to start, since this is going out around the time of the Libra new moon, one of the ones we should discuss is Libra, the Libra mystery school. There's also a great deal of energy, a great deal of focus for many of the people in the shamanic astrology mystery school around the sign of Scorpio. So we thought we might touch into that a little bit. As most everybody here who's been following these astrological cycles that we've been in, we know about the Mars in Aries time period. You know, Mars being in Aries for about 6 months. Today, right around now as we speak, it's around 20 Aries. So we'll talk about Aries. And I also think that because of the global configuration, you know, that is to say this rather unusual and rare Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto thing in Capricorn, that it would be valuable to bring that one in too, past, present, and future mystery schools, essence versus content, and remembering the main theme, emulating the Merlin at the turning of the ages, which it means mainly to look back on what was good about them in the past, what has happened to them now, and how we might redream them into the future. Which one do you think we should start with, Mary?
I just am going to say Capricorn.
Okay. Incidentally, another handout you will get, a document for those who want to explore this more thoroughly, is something that Kaylin and Mary did a lot of enhancements to. It's a really beautiful document about the shadow and light of the different mystery schools. It's in more depth. So that if you want to follow you know, the hints, the clues that we're presenting to you now, you'll have that document also, because we can't in this vlog cover everything. You know, otherwise then that becomes like a class, and I just wanted to get across we wanted to get across just some of the basic concepts here at this time to see what we're dealing with here at the turning of the ages. So with Capricorn, you know, so Capricorn in this our approach is one of the culture bearer, one of the householder, one of the four that most astrologers out there will refer to as the cardinal signs or the cardinal mystery schools. We use householder or we use culture bearer to describe this one. And along with Cancer, it's one of the two that are most responsible for holding a culture together from one generation to the next. They are more of a hierarchical approach to like management, holding it together, knowing what to do, knowing what works, knowing what doesn't work. Cancer is much more from the feeling function. It's more about providing nourishment on a personal level, but Capricorn is much more about, if we could say, kind of like a Native American approach, which we like to weave into this a bit. It's like, does it grow corn? Does it produce practical benefits for the people? Is it something that has some kind of sustainability or some way of connecting past with present and future? So probably more than any of them, I mean, with the possible exception of Cancer, I mean, they kind of have an alliance, a kind of a teamwork, being able to love what happened before. In fact, Capricorn is generally the historian, looking back, I would say 300,000 years now. Capricorn's job is to be the elder, male or female. And so this brings up a very, very interesting problem when considering Capricorn. Because Capricorn has, and this is, by the way, what I'm going to share now is one of the better examples of the difference between essence and content. For 300,000 years, Capricorn has had an essence. There's something about Capricorn that will always have been important, always been useful, always been necessary, and it would be elder knowledge, male or female. I like to think for most of human history, it was the circle of grandmothers, so it was more matrilineal. Because why? Because human beings have been mainly matrilineal until the last 5,500 years when things changed. You know, so it is like the circle of grandmother. It's the elder expertise of the ones that hire and fire the chiefs, that know what works, not some kind of spacey kind of thing, like on a really practical level, what works, and that they can prove it. I mean, it's not like just some weird idea. I mean, it's something that is demonstratable. You can get results, and so for a long period of time. And you can see the importance of this kind of energy, the elder knowledge. But look what's happened to it, though. The essence is still the same, but the content shifted to patriarchy. And it actually shifted into some kind of father god, judgmental, shame, guilt kind of approach, which was never there to begin with. And Mary, I've been reading a number of things recently from elders, individuals that are genuinely elders, and I think probably the most startling, we could say, the greatest outrage that has happened to the mystery school of Capricorn in our current time is the way elders are treated.
Whoa.
In fact, most people think they're an elder just because they've accumulated a certain number of years, and then they put them into a nursing home or something. I mean, we have very few elders. I'm fortunate to have known some authentic elders. But to me, that is the shadow side of what has happened to Capricorn. We're in a death-phobic culture, quite frankly. It's like rather than honoring the whole connection to what has come before and connecting that in with ourselves so we can dream it into the future and to create ways that work for the future generations. So it's always been, so the point I'm making here, and please feel free to dialogue with me about Capricorn here, is that Capricorn is one of the 12 schools of life that at all times in history, if you want to have a balanced, unified, harmonious, workable planet, all 12 need to be valued. But my God, has there ever been a shadow that has been into Capricorn ever since it was essentially usurped by patriarchy? So then you just get, judgmental, the way Saturn has been usurped, the superego, the criticalness, the judgmentalness, the lack of heart that has gone into it, when it's no longer the circle of grandmothers.
And very, I was just saying, very controlling. And because we've only known it in our lifetime, it's kind of hard to sort out what's going on, except that in the chaos that prevails, trying to figure out what is the best about Capricorn to take forward, and clearly what needs to be released to be composted is part of that chaos. It is confusion. It makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if there's almost no elders to follow, I mean, even one thing that comes to mind is that, and I thought of it at the beginning of this inquiry, like Cancer, it is one of the two that is authentically hierarchical. But let's explore what authentic hierarchy can be. It would be like parent and child, or teacher and student, or therapist and client. Now, those are valid hierarchical relationships. However, they have a shadow too. I mean, there can be everything from the controlling teacher, the controlling parent. The parent is trying to force their kid to be what they want them to be, rather than to be a guide for them as they go through their life. Spiritual teachers that end up becoming dictators, or therapists who end up bullying their clients, or actually even worse, allowing the client to project onto the teacher that they're like a parent, or they're a wizard, that they know what's best for them, rather than what I think is the true future orientation of how Capricorn can be, which is to just simply, as someone maybe who's been further down the road, who has a bit more life experience, can simply indicate to a student or a child, yes, that's it. It's actually to verify or validate that, yes, they're on the right track. That does feel right. That is your heart, like things like that, as opposed to doing it for them.
And
so that would be, part of the, I think, chapter.
Excuse me.
Yes, Mary?
That would be, in my sense of understanding, empowering rather than controlling, that confirmation. Yeah. So.
So, of course, when we're talking about the shadow of Capricorn, we are, of course, talking about what many of you out there have at some point in your life have experienced in your life, which is where you follow some teacher, you follow some organization, you follow some way, whether it's a religion or a guru or a spiritual teacher, and then you find the shadow of it. I mean, that's part of our growing pains, to be able to discern the difference between the shadow of Capricorn and what can be really useful about a genuine elder, or those who are really interested in creating ways of being on the planet for the future generations. So kind of a summary of the Capricornian inquiry here would simply be that the Native American side of it, we make no decisions save for the benefit of the generations to follow on the basis of what works. And if you're only looking at the quarterly profits, then we're dealing with the Capricorn's huge shadow. And I guess we're starting with Capricorn here because Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto in Capricorn, Jupiter hitting that area, it's really clear, I'm pretty sure, to everybody what needs to be composted at this point. Whatever the methodology is for composting it is, we don't know. Will it actually be humans that wake up, or will it be Gaia who takes things into her own hands? I mean, I don't know, but something's got to give, that's for sure. Okay, so enough with Capricorn.
Anything more about the new Capricorn beyond that? I mean, what I kind of got from what you said, it's really a new global focus of structure aligned with love rather than control and profitability. And there certainly are a lot of seed people out there that are bringing those ideas to the forefront. So.
Well, I mean, if we think of someone like the Merlin, I mean, the Merlin had, he researched it all. So he was welcome into the courts of all, the kings, as well as Avalon and everything else. I mean, he was also a bit of a scientist, I mean, he actually, an alchemist, I guess you could say. And, he was a teacher. I think that there's a very strong part of him that was Capricorn at its best. And he valued the material from the past, and he was open to what's coming in the future. So any Capricornian prayer is to be open to the new things coming through that could work for the benefit of all people and the planet. Capricorn's an earth sign, so it's not just about humans. It's about everything that is of the earth.
True.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so maybe next we could look at Libra, since it is a Libra new moon, and also Libra is a tremendously interesting one from which to see this distinction between content and essence. So, I mean, if we look at the history of, say, 300,000 years, and we can take it back that far now, because we now know from the new research that the same kind of human beings that we are, same kind of DNA, go back 300,000 years now. That the purpose of Libra, the purpose of the Libra Mystery School, remember, not sun signs, the Libra Mystery School, is to investigate how personal relationship can be sustainable, workable, for keeping a culture together from one generation to the next. So this would not be recreational intimacy, but it would be agreement-oriented relationship. Now, this would include, of course, in our love life, I mean, it could, like what more recently is called marriage. Marriage as we know it today has not been around that long. But the different ways in which human beings will bond with each other or form long-lasting, sustainable connections in their love life. But it would also have to do with the way people collaborate with each other. So in other words, we're not talking about the relationship between an employer and employee, the boss and the employee, or something like that, but rather something more horizontal. Who are our close personal friends? Who are our lovers? Who are our wives and husbands? And how does that operate? So the word marriage does go into it, but then if we think of the difference between content and essence, you see, the essence is this inquiry about how do we know ourselves through another or through others. But the content can be lots of different things. I mean, you could have the content at very many time periods in history, including some parts of the world still today, of this thing called arranged marriage. You know, based on caste or class or economic status, even sometimes using astrology. It would be determined at birth, if not before, who they're going to pair you up with. You know, I'm not an advocate at the turning of the ages of arranged marriage, but it was something that worked for long periods of time quite well. It was a stabilizing influence in the world at various points. But also in the Libran inquiry, and this is more recent in our, quote, history, is the aspiration for what, a soulmate, a twin flame. Relationship itself is a path to God. Conscious equal partnership. I've spent a lot of time looking at this one. And in fact, those that have been in the school for a while know the phrase I always like to use for this. This is more like the future dream of what we're coming into now for Libra. Non-hierarchical, conscious, equal partnership. But that's certainly not Christian marriage, no. Or it's not the version of relationship as advocated by Amy Coney Barrett, you know, who unfortunately may end up becoming the next Supreme Court person. All right, so now she's like a throwback to an old content. So that's the difference between the different kinds of content. It's like those who believe that in something in the Old Testament says that the relationship between husband and wife should be a certain thing. Well, depends on how you cherry pick it, because actually, how many wives did Solomon have? In other words, these are like different. It's like the content is like fashions, but that's different than the essence. I myself had some experience when I first went to Thailand, back when I was in high school. And that was just as Western pop culture was showing up. And that was a culture that had very, traditional ways of having boys and girls get together, and how they would have marriages, how they would have family connection. And here was the influx of Hollywood and Western pop culture, and it created huge confusion. Now, who is to say which way was better? Well, I think it would be hard to say that Hollywood Western pop culture is really a good way, but that seems to be the current fashion content. Unfortunately, the Libra Mystery School. And then we get to this whole other thing, which is unfortunately the shadow of Libra that's come into play. It's so easily judged against. And you know what I'm going to say here, I'm sure. Codependency. In a weak way, defining who we are by who we're with. Now, there's a very, very fine line between a genuine openness and curiosity about how things are going with your partner or how things are going with other people. I mean, I'll give you an example. There are some really great, functioning, beautifully relationships where literally there's not more than 10% of one person in the relationship is even concerned about the other person, you know, or the other person maybe only 10%, and it's fine. I mean, it's a perfectly fine collaboration in many cases. So I'm making no judgment about what percentage it has to be, but Libra wants to get as close as possible to 50%, to have actually it be an equal connection. Conscious equal connection. This would also be true for like a business partner, you know, for collaboration on that level, friendship, deeply personal and equal. But what becomes codependent though, when you go across the 50% line, you know, so then your happiness is based entirely upon how the other person's doing. And that's why these days, in our time of autonomy and sovereignty, Libra gets a lot of negative comments. The people are only looking at the shadow of it. You know, just as the shadow, the usual regular old sun sign descriptions of Capricorn are its shadow. The regular old kind of descriptions, sun sign descriptions of Libra, its superficiality, its codependency and stuff like that are its shadow, not its essence, not its essence. So to be able to tune into the essence, all of them are equally valid. I mean, this is, I think, one of the most important things about astrology, is that it's all places on the wheel of life. All the places around the round table of life are equally valid, all necessary. Damn, it's unfortunate how different times in different history, different times in history, different countries, they will have preferences, you know. It's Virgo, no good, Aquarius, good, you know, or something like that. I mean, we've really got to get past that. And also to get past these popular shadow descriptions of sun signs, and to delve more deeply into the essence of the different mystery schools. And that's also what any individual who hangs out with the Avalon priestesses or Arthur or Merlin, hopefully Arthur when he was really studying with the Merlin, you know, before the round table was destroyed, is that's basically the teaching that's taking place, you know, all the places on the wheel. Okay, so that's a little bit about Libra. Can you think of what's coming up for you when I'm speaking about Libra here, Mary? You who have no Libra.
Well, no, that's not completely true.
Well,
My Mercury is in Libra.
I'm sorry. That's
So,
right. That's
and that's a very good thing because I have a really deep sense of how all the archetypes relate through having that. So yeah, no, that's a really good tool for me. But it's not only the only place I have it, it's really the only culture bearing archetype that's on my natal chart. So I treasure it. So I think what I've learned from shamanic astrology about this development of conscious equal partnership, something that I became aware of in the 90s, but didn't put it together in the same way. I think that has probably impacted my life personally in a greater way in terms of what I've sought and created in my own kinds of personal relationships. I can't say that was true when I was married in my 20s, when I really surrendered a lot of my freedom and myself. Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, I've actually viscerally experienced the evolution that we've seen come about in Libra, and there's so much more work to be done. When I look at all of the arranged marriages, the honor killings of these Middle Eastern women who don't accept arranged marriage, and the whole idea of marriage being a position of honor for a family, not an individual choice. Right. That's a huge one. So yeah, I feel that one in my heart. So yeah, equally valuing all the positions on the wheel is also a piece. Even though that's not necessarily a personal relationship, it's it, it's equally valuing sentient beings and bringing that wholeness and that oneness back.
You know, one of the things, well, I thought of another thing I think it might be useful to say about Libra, and this is particularly something I'm noticing a lot with certain men. And that is that there tends to be this judgment against the desire. I'm thinking of here more among the younger generation now, those in their 20s and 30s. I've even heard it said by some of them, Libra is by definition patriarchal. You know, that Libra, because all they see are the older versions of husband-wife relationship.
Right.
And there's such a focus among some of them, a lot of them, about getting beyond the cultural consensus reality approach. And so therefore they believe Libra in and of itself needs to be eliminated, so that freedom, we can be anything we want to be, that certainly bonding is a weakness, to actually define who you are about who you're with is a weakness. And the thing is, I have seen a lot more men recently damaged who are authentically a Libra type. That is to say that their sensitivity in their heart, in their soul, is to go deeply into intimacy with one person. And that is judged as somehow being a weakness, particularly by some of the women who are more Amazonian. And so a lot of men I've seen really hurt by this. Now, not all men. I mean, this is just one place on the wheel. That there tends to be a lot of damage done to these sensitive males who do want to have a conscious equal partnership, and then they unfortunately make the mistake of getting involved with women who put them down for being weak. So I just see this a lot, and it needs to be brought up. That Libra can be a strength, and it is a valid place on the wheel. I'm not saying, and this is what always happens when this information is presented this way. People say, "Wait a minute, I'm not into that," or that's not me. Well, no, that's just one of the places on the wheel. Once you have some insight about an authentic way of being, that does not mean that's true for everybody. So you have to know all the different places on the wheel, and don't be so ready to think that Libra is some sort of patriarchal debris, or some remnant from an old age.
I think we just have to get to know the new Libra better and bring it in stronger. Right. Yeah.
So then let's move on to Scorpio.
Scorpio. Yes, my favorite. The strongest will, the passion and intensity and depth of aliveness and the surrender of death. Good.
The way that I always like to begin any discussion about Scorpio is by giving the very simple little definition I like to use for it. Scorpio means to have the courage to go to the edge of aliveness for its own sake. So basically to be open enough, to be courageous enough to go to the edge of aliveness. And it's not something mental. It's not a consciousness path. It's visceral. Either you feel it or you don't. And at its best, it's the one that is capable of experiencing not just the strongest will, because I think that Leo may give it a run for its money, So wait a minute, I have the strongest will, But it has more to do with that capacity, along with a strong will, to connect into the greatest amount of life force energy. To connect to that kundalini, to that circuitry, to that cosmic circuitry that is like way beyond atomic energy. It's a strongest energy that exists that a human being can connect in with. It is the Ananda. It is the aspect of the one reality. It's not the consciousness of the one reality. It's not the beingness of the one reality. It's the energy and the aliveness of it. Now, Scorpio. Boy, has there been a lot of shadow associated with this one. There would have been other time periods in history, in more shamanic times, in certain indigenous cultures, where not that it didn't have a shadow, but it was allowed to function as being one of the ones that was desirable. In more recent times, the judgments against interlegion, particularly if a person is born female, until just recently has that shifted. Recently, we now have more of an openness to understand this power of the feminine. But for women, Scorpio was Shakti. It represented the active expression of the feminine principle, nothing to do with mother, nurturer, giver, receptive, nothing to do with that. Autonomous, sovereign, independent, running the energy. For masculine, of course, we're dealing with the male version of the same thing, male or female. Alchemy, magic, sorcery, shamanism, working with the energies of death and rebirth, where sorcery doesn't mean power over others, it means connecting to that source energy. Right. A lot of fear has been placed into this, and that's because probably since Scorpio, mystery school, remember now, mystery school, I'm not talking to you. Hey, wait a minute, I'm a Scorpio sun sign. I'm not like that. No. So this is the mystery school itself. And so if you have Mars and Scorpio, it's what you're working on. If you have a Scorpio moon, you might be more connected to the old patterns associated with it. But consider this. Since Scorpio, now seen to be connected to Pluto, previously was more Aries, but now Pluto has been identified as the resonant energy with Scorpio. Underworld dimension, okay? And also the shadow. So would it not make sense to some of the strongest shadow and some of the most extreme versions of the underworld experience are going to be found in this mystery school? So that, we could say every mystery school has a shadow. The epitome of the shadow, the archetype of shadow itself in the underworld is in the Scorpio mystery school. And then we could say there's a lot of mistakes that have been made. This is an example where I have two really close friends that have, and I'm not even thinking of the Scorpio risings in our governing council, but I have two very close friends that have 14.5-degree Scorpio rising. And what I've noticed about it is people who are consciously trying to learn the new material, to honestly deal with the shadow of what's been in that mystery school in the past, definitely have taken on a lot. I mean, they have very melodramatic lives. They take on, in a sense, we could say more than what an average person takes on. It's more intense, I guess you could say, if you bring it. If you have this as your investigation. Interestingly, when considering Scorpio and the Scorpio Mystery School, due to the judgments against it, due to the shadow programs that have been in the field of it before, and I do want to mention one of the more important one of those in a moment. Actually, let's just go all the way to the root of it. Back in the day, in shamanic indigenous times, if a person was working with Scorpio, they knew that their responsibility was to maximize their life force energy. That was their responsibility. And at that time period in history, they believed there was a limited amount of life force available in the universe. And so therefore, they would go around having to either they have to watch their back, because there would be some other scorpionic person that was trying to rip off their life force, because the injunction was to maximize your life force. Now, in more recent times, there's been a new understanding of this, which is that there's an infinite amount of life force available in the universe. It is not necessary to rip anybody else off of it. You don't have to watch your back, that there's some, evil, satanic, dark shaman who's ready to take your life force. There's infinite amount. That's part of the revisioning of Scorpio that's happening at this point. On another level, that revisioning is saying I will, that my will be thy will. That's very, very tricky, because if you have this visceral mystery school, if it happens to be something that you are connecting in with, you're not afraid of it, that it can be very tricky when you feel that life force and you start to feel, I did that, rather than the fact that you happen to be granted that experience. This happens all the time in the shamanic world. Somebody's working a rain ceremony, or they're doing some healing ceremony. Oh, I did that. No, you happen to be at the right place to work the ceremony, to experience the energy. You didn't do it. You had the opportunity to participate in working. And the same thing with shamanic healers. It's not the old style, which is, I am the one who heals you, because I have the energy. Rather, you're assisting another person get in touch with their inner shaman, their own connection to that life force that we all have the ability to connect with. So there is a lot of stuff to have to move through with it. And it seems that the two ways that people can move through it, one is we call it phobic, and one is we call it counterphobic. The phobic approach is being afraid. You got something to deal with Scorpio, and they're afraid to even go there. They've been told it's dangerous. They've been told that it's scary. They've been told that it's dangerous to others or to themselves. That's fairly common. But then you have the counterphobic approach. Go to the edge, okay? I will go so far over the edge, which is yet another way to not feel. If you're phobic, you don't feel it. All you feel is fear. But if you're counterphobic, you go so far past the edge that you're also not having that deep experience of the passion and the aliveness that's available in the Ananda aspect of life. So that's one of the very first things that happens when I work with somebody who's working with Scorpio. Because if you're counterphobic, you can be addicted to the drama of it. It's like, I need to have intense experiences in order to feel alive. And that can be just as that can be just as much of a mistake as not wanting to have any, because you're afraid to feel. Mary, I know you have some things to say about Scorpio Mystery School.
Well, I loved what you just said about being addicted to drama. I do have my eldest falling in that category. It's hard to watch that one. But I think a lot of that drama comes from trauma that doesn't get resolved and just attracts more of the same energy. So I think in all of these mystery schools, there's a great deal coming about to heal so much of what's broken that we're carrying, all of us, no matter what our natal charts say, because a lot of the shadows, I think, are all results of early childhood trauma that hasn't been resolved. So in terms of Scorpio, I know we've always talked about it being secretive sometimes, but mostly not from a very conscious ill will, but as a survival strategy historically, because it was considered a dangerous archetype, and it was greatly suppressed, if not
Right.
annihilated. Right. So, and if we have a lot of Scorpio, we may be carrying some of that energy as well. And the ability of Scorpio to intentionally or unintentionally trigger other people's shadow to come to the surface has also been a very interesting phenomena of this archetype that has been good to learn about, especially.
Yeah, we call that shadow magnet,
Mhm.
which that expression sounds a little too scary. Then we can just use the other one, catalyst. Basically it's an individual whose energy is designed to expose that which is hidden, or to catalyze a process, to have it boil quickly, or to react. Just to react. But sometimes one notices that if a Scorpio type person happens to be around a person of the kind we haven't dealt with here, but the ones that are, in this conversation, like an Aquarius type or a Sagittarius type, or those that are Virgo type, the ones that are more, either detached, self-contained, or don't express that much emotion, this can drive Scorpio nuts. So therefore Scorpio will sometimes just want to get a reaction, even if it's to piss them off. Least react. That can actually be one of the things that can happen. That it's important to understand when you're doing couples counseling. When there's a one person has the Scorpio and nobody else understands.
He froze up. Mm-mm. Oh dear.
Yeah, we just had a little bit of a computer glitch here. It crashed over here on my end, and I had to go to a pocket router. But I think we should be able to finish it up pretty nicely now. So we were discussing the Scorpio Mystery School, and how much shadow there has been in that one, and the different ways that different people react to it. And what we were discussing was along your point, Mary, about how, as a survival strategy, people have been secretive. They've kept it hidden, which is completely understandable. But there is also this other ingredient about Scorpio. This is really one of the biggest problems right now among parents, should they have Scorpionic kids, is that there is shamanically and historically something really important of essence about, in the Scorpio Mystery School, of having something, we could say, you're building energy without dispersing it. So there's like this building of life force, and sometimes I'll give you an example. I've certainly been through this myself. As a Libra, I'll have this incredible experience and I want to share it with everybody. And I have been fortunate that I've had some fairly interesting peak experiences. But from a Scorpio perspective, if you tell the story too many times, it loses its juice. So to be able to know what to hold sacred, what to keep within yourself, that has a lot to do with privacy also. Can you imagine because Scorpio is about having also an internal life, having an internal connection to our truth, not on a consciousness level, but energetically. So parents, please understand, if you have a son or a daughter with a fair amount of Scorpio, don't micromanage, allow them to. So that's part of what we have, revitalization of Scorpio to move forward. Okay, well, clearly you can see from what we've discovered, what we've been going through here, there's a lot to this project of past, present, and future mystery schools. In fact, it's why there is a shamanic astrology mystery school, to actually work on this stuff, to value something about our history, to see what's happened to it now, to be able to step beyond consensus reality and to see the larger view historically, but also to be able to dream it into a better future, and to be on the front lines with seeing how there is new content coming through. What would Scorpio actually be like in the future? All you Scorpio risings have that task. What is actually Libra to be in the future? All you Libra risings have that task. All of them. I mean, every rising sign, even if you have the same moon position as your rising sign, it's still something new you're working on. At the turning of the ages, we're inventing a whole new way of being on this planet, but it's still the same 12 essences. If you get to know the 12 essences and you don't get befuddled by the content, then you can actually get along with everyone in the world and be in the process of building a new world, as seed people for what's to come.
That's right. Yes. And yet to discover aliens.
So thanks for being with us here for the very first vlog. We're going to be doing this on a regular basis. Sometimes it'll be my pleasure to do it together with you, Mary, and we'll have some other people in the school also to dialogue with me on these things. Maybe the next month might be on Jupiter and Saturn going into Aquarius, possibly. I don't know. But I thought this is a good way to start by looking at some very core material about the uniqueness of our school, right?
All right. All right. Well, we definitely filled our time well, and I'm sure you'll welcome any questions or comments that others may have after hearing this.
You just made a suggestion there in the chat that maybe one of the things for sure for next month would be to look at the one we didn't have time for today, which is Aries.
Right. It's great.
Good
it's
idea.
So good to be so comprehensive, though. I'm so glad we did it this way. All right. Daniel, thank you. Congratulations on completing our first vlog. This is historical for shamanic astrology. It will help people even look forward more to the new moon and our new moon members call and the new moon newsletter, as we all coordinate more deeply with her cycle and honor her in acknowledging this time each month. I'm very happy to be a part of this. Thank you for the opportunity, Daniel. It's great.
Thanks, President. Till the next time. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.